The forest doesn't care about your plans. It doesn't care if you're brave, or smart, or have the best gear money can buy. It has its own rules, ancient and unforgiving. I learned that the hard way, up in the unforgiving wilderness of northern Minnesota. My name is Alex, and I was part of a search and rescue team. We thought we were the best, we were wrong. It all started when a little girl named Lily went missing from a campsite near the Canadian border. A classic case, we thought. It wanders off, gets turned around. We'd find her huddled under a tree, cold and scared, but alive. We had a team of 12, plus 2 canine units, seasoned veterans. Every one of us, our leader, a grizzled old-timer named Marcus, had been doing this for 30 years. If anyone could find a lost child in these woods, it was him. The first 24 hours were standard procedure. We grid searched the area around the campsite, fanning out, calling her name. The dogs whined, their noses to the ground, but they couldn't seem to hold a scent for more than a few feet before losing it, circling in confusion. That was the first red flag. The air was still, perfect for tracking. There was no reason for the trail to just vanish. By day 3, a heavy dread had settled over our team. The parents were inconsolable, and the media was starting to circle. We were exhausted, our voices raw from shouting Lily's name. Marcus decided to push us deeper into the forest, into a section marked on old maps as unstable terrain. Locals had superstitions about it. Old Ojibwe legends, the elders wouldn't speak of 2 outsiders. They just shook their heads and whispered a word that sounded like Wendigo. We were modern men and women. We dismissed it as folklore. That was our second and biggest mistake. The forest changed as we went deeper. The usual sounds of birds and insects faded away, replaced by an oppressive silence. The trees, ancient pines and birches, grew closer together, their branches clawing at the sky, blocking out the sun. It felt like we were walking into the throat of some great beast. That evening, we made camp in a small clearing. The temperature plummeted, and a strange, coppery smell hung in the air, like old blood and winter frost. That's when we heard it, a voice carried on the wind. It sounded like a little girl, crying for her mommy. It sounded like Lily. Our hearts leaped. We grabbed our flashlights, our radios crackling to life. Marcus was the first to his feet, a look of grim determination on his face. He split us into 3 teams of 4. "Team Alpha, you're with me," he barked. We moved toward the sound. "Bravo and Charlie, you sweep the flanks. Stay in radio contact. Do not break formation." My team, Bravo, moved out to the east. The crying sound was deceptive. One moment it was right in front of us. The next it seemed to be coming from miles away, echoing from all directions at once. It was playing with us. After an hour of fruitless searching, the crying stopped, replaced by a new sound, a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the soles of our boots. It was a sound of pure, primal hunger. The dogs started whimpering, their tails tucked between their legs, refusing to move. Radio static, then a scream. A raw, terrified scream that was cut off abruptly. "Alpha Team, report." Marcus's voice, usually so calm, was tight with panic. No response, just more static. Then, another voice came through the radio. It was distorted, a grotesque mimicry of our team member, Dave, from Alpha Team. "It's so cold," the voice rasped, a dry, crackling sound. "So hungry." Chaos erupted. My team leader, Sarah, yelled for us to fall back to the main camp. We ran, stumbling over roots and rocks, the forest itself seeming to trip us up. The growling was closer now, a heavy, loping sound of something impossibly large keeping pace with us, just beyond the tree line. We burst back into our camp to find it empty. Charlie team was gone. Their tents were slashed to ribbons, their gear scattered, and in the center of the clearing, something was stuck to a tree with a hunting knife. It was Dave's radio, still crackling. We knew then that we weren't the hunters anymore. We were the prey. The 8 of us who remained huddled together, back-to-back guns and flashlights pointing into the suffocating darkness. The silence returned, thicker and more terrifying than the noise. It stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then, we heard the voice again. This time, it wasn't Lily. It was my mother's voice, calling my name, asking why I hadn't come home for dinner. Another team member heard his deceased wife. It was using our memories, our love, against us. It was a violation of the soul. One of our guys, a young rookie named Ben, snapped. He started screaming, "Show yourself, you monster," and fired his rifle blindly into the trees. A flash of movement, impossibly fast. Something huge and pale and gaunt shot out from the darkness. It was taller than a man, skeletal, thin with skin the color of old bone, stretched taut over its frame. Its limbs were too long, jointed at unnatural angles. And its head was a deer's skull, the antlers like a thorny crown. But where the eyes should have been, there were only deep, black pits that burned with a cold, malevolent intelligence. It moved with a horrifying, jerky grace. Before any of us could react, it grabbed Ben, its long, clawed fingers digging into his chest. He didn't even have time to scream. It just pulled him into the darkness. And he was gone. We ran. We didn't even try to fight. We just ran. We abandoned our gear, our mission, everything. The thing didn't chase us. Not in a traditional sense. It erdet os. We'd hear its mimicry to our left, and we'd veer right. A guttural growl from behind would push us forward. It was toying with us, driving us deeper into its territory, savoring our fear. We lost 2 more people that night, picked off one by one in the disorienting darkness. By dawn, only 5 of us were left. We were broken, hollowed-out shells of the confident professionals we had been just days before. We stumbled through the woods, not even speaking, just moving, driven by the most basic survival instinct. We eventually broke through the tree line and saw a logging road. We had never been so happy to see a sign of civilization. We flagged down a logging truck, the driver's eyes wide with shock at our appearance. We were covered in mud and scratches, our eyes wild with a terror he couldn't possibly comprehend. We told the authorities what we could. We said we were attacked by a bear, a large, aggressive one. What else could we say? Who would believe the truth? They mounted another, larger search. They found the tattered remains of our camp. They found a few scraps of clothing, but they never found Lily, or the 7 members of my team who were lost. They were just gone. But the story doesn't end there. The search party came back, but we came back wrong. I see it in the eyes of the other survivors. A haunted, distant look. We don't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see those burning black pits in a skull of a deer. I hear the voices of my friends, twisted and mocked, and the hungered. I feel it sometimes, a deep, gnawing cold in the pit of my stomach that no amount of food can satisfy. A craving for something more. The forest took something from us that night, and it put something else in its place. A seed of its own cold, endless hunger. I've moved far away from Minnesota, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls, I can almost hear a voice on the wind. A voice that sounds just like mine, calling out in the dark, telling anyone who will listen just how cold and how very, very hungry it is. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to follow 4 more tailies from the shadows. Stay safe out there. My grandfather stopped speaking English when I turned 16. Not to everyone, just to me. He'd switch to Cree mid-sentence whenever I asked about his logging days, or about the land north of Red Lake, or about why our family never hunted past the old fire tower on Highway 105. My mother said it was dementia, but his eyes were clear when he did it, and the words he chose were deliberate. For 2 years, we barely communicated. Then, in October 2007, 3 weeks before he died, he handed me a bundle wrapped in canvas. Inside was a journal, 50 years old, written in a mix of French and English and Cree. "Read it," he said in English. The first clear sentence he'd spoken to me in months. "Then you'll understand why I didn't want you to know." The journal covered the winter of 1958, when my grandfather was 19 and working as a camp cook for a timber operation near Ear Falls. The crew was small, 8 men, working a remote cut block that had been abandoned in the 1930s. After something the journal called the trouble, he noted that the older loggers wouldn't work after dark, that they kept tobacco pouches hung above their bunks, and that one of the foalers, a Finn named Carlo, refused to enter the woods without a priest's blessing carved into his axe handle. The first entry that unsettled me was dated January 14th, 1958. A young logger named Thomas had gone missing during the night. His bunk was empty at breakfast, his boots still by the stove, his coat still hanging on the nail. They searched for 3 days and found nothing. No tracks in the snow. The foreman wanted to report it to the OPP, but Carlo said no. "If you bring the police, they'll find him, and you won't want to see what's left." On January 19th, Thomas came back. He walked into camp at dawn, naked, barefoot, skin blue-gray with cold but not shivering. He didn't speak. He just stood at the edge of the clearing, staring, mouth open, breathing in slow, wet rasps. My grandfather wrote that his eyes were wrong, too wide, too dark, like something was looking out from behind them. Carlo shot him. And when they checked the body, my grandfather noted, he weighed nothing, like the person was already gone and only the skin was left. The journal gets harder to follow after that. My grandfather's handwriting becomes erratic, entries shorter. He mentions hearing voices in the woods, conversations in languages he didn't recognize. He describes waking to find footprints circling the camp, bare footprints in snow at 30 below, the stride too long. On February 2nd, he wrote about the offerings. The loggers had started leaving food at the tree line every night. Bread, salt, pork, tobacco. Carlo said it was the only way to keep it satisfied. It wasn't named in the journal, just referred to as the one who remembers, or the hungry man. According to Carlo, it had been in those woods since before the treaties, maybe before anyone. It was what happened when a man gave in to the worst parts of winter, when hunger and cold stripped away everything, human, and left only need. The final entry is dated February 17th, 1958. The crew had lost 2 more men, both the same way. Disappearing at night, returning days later as something else, something that had to be put down. They were abandoning the cut. Carlo had warned my grandfather never to come back. The deep woods remember us now, and once it knows your scent, it follows. Not today. Not tomorrow, but someday. When you're alone and the cold is close, it will find you. The last line was in Cree. An elder translated it for me. I have brought the hunger home with me. God forgive me. My mother told me my grandfather stopped going into the bush entirely after 1960. He moved to town, took a job at the mill, never went farther than 10 miles from pavement. She said he used to have nightmares, that he'd wake up speaking Cree, in a voice that didn't sound like his own, and that sometimes you'd find him at the window at 3 a.m., staring at the tree line, not moving. He told her once that something had followed him home from the camps, and that as long as he stayed near people, near light, it couldn't reach him. But if he ever went deep again, it would be waiting. My grandfather died on November 4th, 2007. At the funeral, I met a man named Douglas Myers who'd worked the camps with him in the 50s. He was a good man, Douglas said. Then he leaned close and whispered, but he brought it back with him. I can smell it on you now. You've read the journal, haven't you? I didn't answer. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. It passes down, blood to blood. Your grandfather spent 50 years keeping it at arm's length, but you're young. You'll slip, you'll go to far north, or stay out too late, or find yourself alone when you shouldn't be, and when you do, it'll be there. Still hungry, still waiting. I don't go into the bush anymore. I live in Thunder Bay now, work an office job, keep my distance from anything deeper than a city park, but sometimes, Late at night, I hear footsteps outside my apartment. Slow, deliberate, barefoot on pavement. And when I look out the window, there's nothing there. Just the street, who's the dark, but I can feel it watching. And I know my grandfather was right. Some warnings aren't meant to protect you. They're meant to delay the inevitable. The flickering light of my headlamp cut through the dust motes dancing in the air. We'd found it tucked away in the deepest part of the Ontario wilderness, the abandoned Blackwood logging station. It had been swallowed by the forest, reclaimed by nature after a mysterious incident in the winter of 1978 forced its closure. The official story was a sudden, brutal blizzard, but the local legends, they whispered something else, something older. My buddy, Liam, was filming. "Anything yet, Alex?" he asked, his voice echoing in the cavernous main hall. I was kneeling by an old steel locker. The lock rusted shut. A few solid hits with our crowbar and it groaned open. Inside, amongst mildewed clothes and faded photos of a smiling family, was a leather-bound journal. The cover was cold to the touch, unnaturally so. I opened it. The handwriting was frantic, spidery. The first entry was dated November 15th, 1978. The journal belonged to a man named Thomas Miller. He was the station's foreman. The first few weeks of entries were mundane timber yields equipment malfunctions, complaints about the food. But then, the tone shifted. He started writing about the cold. Not just the normal Canadian winter cold, but a biting, gnawing cold that seemed to seep into the men's bones. A cold that the stoves couldn't fight. He wrote about a strange silence that had fallen over the forest. The birds had stopped singing. The squirrels had vanished. The only sound was the wind, which he said sounded less like wind and more like a whisper. Then came the first disappearance. A young logger named Pete went out to check a trapline and never came back. They searched for 2 days. All they found were his tracks in the snow, which ended abruptly in a clearing, as if he'd been plucked right out of the air. The men grew fearful. They started seeing things at the edge of the woods. A tall, gaunt figure, moving too fast for a man, its limbs too long, too thin. Thomas tried to keep morale up, dismissing it as cabin fever, tricks of the light, but his own entries revealed his growing terror. He wrote about the hunger, not their own, but a palpable sense of it in the air. A starvation so profound it felt like a physical presence pressing in on the camp from all sides. The men started losing weight, even though their rations were holding. They became gaunt, hollow. At night, they'd hear scratching at the walls of the cabins, a desperate, clawing sound. One night, Thomas saw it clearly, framed in his window by the moonlight. It was impossibly tall and skeletal. Its skin the color of old bruises and stretched tight over its bones. Its head was like a deer's skull, but the empty eye sockets held a faint, chilling light. And the smell of rot and decay and a freezer left open for too long. He knew the stories. The old tales of the Algonquin people, the spirit of the lonely places, the insatiable hunger born from a human who had resorted to the ultimate taboo to survive a harsh winter. Wendigo. He didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was mounting. Another man vanished, his screams cut short in the dead of night. They found the door to his cabin ripped from its hinges. Inside, there was chaos, but no blood, just a single long, gray hair on the floor. Panic set in. The men wanted to leave, but a freak blizzard had snowed them in completely. The radio was dead. They were trapped. Thomas's journal became a descent into madness. He described the creature's voice, a high-pitched mimicry of their own loved ones, calling to them from the woods, begging them to come out. "Honey, it's me. I'm lost. Please, help me." It was a cruel, psychological torture. They boarded up the windows, but they could still hear it. Walking on the roof, scratching. Always scratching. The final entries are almost illegible. The men started turning on each other, their own hunger becoming twisted, unnatural. Thomas wrote about hiding in the foreman's office, barricading the door. He could hear screaming from the main hall, not just of terror, but of something worse. He wrote that the Wendigo wasn't just outside anymore. It was in seed. The hunger had infected them. He disrobed, looking through a crack in the door and seeing one of his own men, his friend, feasting on the flesh of another. His eyes, they were gone, replaced by that same cold, hateful light. The very last entry is just a few words, scrawled with a shaking hand. It's so cold. The hunger, it's inside me now. God, forgive me. It smells so sweet. Liam lowered the camera. The silence in the abandoned station was deafening. We need to go, he whispered, his face pale. I slammed the journal shut. As Primera stood up, a sound drifted from the far end of the hole. A faint, dry scratching. It sounded like a nail being dragged along a wooden wall. Then, another sound. A low whisper carried on a draft that was suddenly, unnaturally cold. It was a woman's voice. It sounded just like my mother. Alex, it whispered. Are you there? I'm so cold. We didn't wait to hear another word. We ran. We left the camera, the gear, everything. We just ran. I still have the journal. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can feel the coldness emanating from it. And sometimes, when the wind howls outside my window, I hear a whisper, and I feel a hunger that isn't my own. We never went back to the Blackwood logging station, and I'm telling you now, neither should you. Some places are left abandoned for a reason. Thanks for watching. If you have your own chilling encounters with the unexplained, share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the dark corners of the world. Stay safe out there. I grew up in a family of ice fishermen in northern Wisconsin, 3rd generation, running tip-ups and spear houses on Lake Superior South Shore every winter since I could walk. My grandfather built our fish house in 1964, a 12 by 16 shed mounted on skids that we'd tow onto the ice each December, always setting up in the same spot 3 miles out from Cornucopia. In the winter of 2019, my father, my Uncle Carl, and I made the decision to push farther north than we'd ever gone, targeting a deep trench near the Apostle Islands that the old Ojibwe fishermen used to avoid, a place they called Mashimonadusagaigan, which translates roughly "too bad, Spirit Lake." A charter captain in Bayfield told us the fishing there was untouched, but when I asked why nobody fished it anymore, he just shook his head and said, "People who go out there don't stay long." On December 27th, with the ice measuring 18 inches thick, we hitched the fish house to my father's truck and drove it 5 miles out onto the frozen expanse, farther north than our family had ever been. The ice up there felt different. Harder. Older. We drilled our holes and set up over a spot where my depth finder showed 120 feet of water, then rigged 6 tip-ups in a circle around the shelter. The temperature outside was holding at 5 below, but inside it was warm enough to fish and Carl was already pulling up whitefish, one after another, all of them big and healthy. But when I looked out the window toward shore, I couldn't see the lights of Cornucopia anymore, just flat white in every direction. My phone had no signal. The GPS was working, but the map showed us farther north than we'd driven, almost a mile past where we'd stopped. I checked it twice. The coordinates didn't change. On the second night, the knocking started. Not ice expansion, but something rhythmic, deliberate, coming from below the house. 3 knocks, pause. 3 knocks, pause. Carl thought it was the current pushing debris, but there's no current under 18 inches of frozen lake, and the sound was too precise. Around 9 p.m., one of the tip-ups outside went off, the flag snapping up, line screaming out. I went out to check it and found the spool stripped clean, 200 feet of line gone. When I looked down into the hole, I saw movement. Something large and pale, rising slowly from the deep. Not a fish. Too big. Too slow. It stopped maybe 10 feet down and just hung there. And for a moment I thought I saw a face, humanoid, eyes too large and mouth open in a shape that wasn't quite right. Then it sank back into the dark. I backed away from the hole and went inside without saying anything. By day 4, we'd stopped catching fish. The tip-ups sat silent, and the depth finder showed nothing but empty water. My father had stopped talking. He'd sit by his hole for hours, not moving, just staring down. Kara wanted to pull off the ice, said something felt wrong, but my father refused. That night, the knocking changed. It wasn't coming from below anymore. It was coming from the walls. Slow, methodical circles around the perimeter of the house, like something outside was testing the structure. I grabbed my flashlight and went to the door, but my father grabbed my arm.
"Don't open it,"
he said. His voice was flat, empty. "It's not trying to get in. It's trying to see if we'll come out." We sat there in silence while the knocking continued, circling. Then it stopped. For maybe 30 seconds, nothing. Then we heard footsteps on the roof. Heavy, deliberate, walking from one end to the other, then back again. The next morning, Carl's tip-up was gone, not pulled under. Gone. The entire rig had been removed and placed 20 feet away on the ice, arranged in a perfect circle with the line coiled in the center. My father saw it and said we were leaving. We started packing when I noticed the ice around the house had changed. There were marks, shallow grooves carved into the surface in patterns that looked almost like symbols, spiraling outward from the fish house in concentric rings. And in the center of each ring was a hole, not drilled but melted, the edges smooth and the water beneath black and still. I counted 12 of them. Carl started the truck. We hitched the house and drove south as fast as the ice would allow. But halfway to shore, my father told me to stop. He was pointing. There, maybe 100 yards to the east, was another fish house, same size as ours. Same color. It was ours. I checked the hitch. Our house was still behind us, but the one on the ice was identical, down to the rust on the stovepipe. Carl whispered, "Keep driving." We did. And when I looked in the rearview mirror, the duplicate was gone. We pulled off the ice at Cornucopia just before noon and haven't used the fish house since. That spring, a commercial fisherman found a fish house drifting in open water near Devil's Island. No one inside, door open, stove still warm. The registration number matched a house that had been reported abandoned. On the ice in 1981. Inside they found a journal, water-damaged but readable. The last entry was dated February 3rd, 1981. It said, "Something is knocking. We should not have come this far north. It knows we are here. It has been waiting." My Uncle Carl died of a heart attack in 2020. My father stopped fishing entirely. And whoa, when I talk about that winter. But sometimes, late at night, I'll hear knocking on my bedroom wall. 3 times. Pause. 3 times, and I know it followed us home. My brother, Liam, vanished in the woods behind our childhood home 5 years ago. They found his ripped backpack near an old hunter's trail, but that was it. No body, no struggle, just gone. The search parties gave up after a month. The town whispered series a bear, a fall into a hidden crevasse, a runaway. But I knew better. I knew what lived in those deep, dark woods. The stories my grandfather told us weren't just campfire tales, they were warnings. For 5 years, I've walked those same trails, a silent vigil for a ghost. I'd call his name into the endless sea of trees, hoping for anything other than the echo of my own voice. The woods always felt heavy, like the air was thick with something ancient and malevolent. I'd feel eyes on my back, hear twigs snap just out of sight, and catch fleeting movements in my peripheral vision. Locals told me to stay away, that the woods were haunted by the memory of what happened. I didn't have the heart to tell them it wasn't a memory that haunted those woods. It was a hunger. Last week, something changed. I was hiking the same trail where Liam's pack was found. The late afternoon sun casting long, skeletal shadows through the pines. The usual silence was broken by something new, a voice. It was faint, carried on the wind, almost lost in the rustle of leaves. "Alex." It was a whisper, but it froze me solid. It sounded like Liam. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Liam?" I shouted, my voice cracking. I stumbled off the path, pushing through dense underbrush toward the sound. "Liam, is that you?" The voice came again, closer this time. "Alex, I'm here. Help me." It was his voice, but wrong. There was a thin, reedy quality to it, like a poor recording played on an old tape deck. A chilling mimicry, a desperate hope fought against the cold dread rising in my gut. I kept pushing forward, deeper into the woods, away from the marked trail. The sun was dipping below the tree line now, and the forest was growing dark with alarming speed. "Where are you, Liam?" I yelled, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The voice answered, its location shifting. "Over here." "Hurry, Alex. It's so cold." It seemed to be coming from a dense thicket of fir trees just ahead. My rational mind was screaming at me. This wasn't right. After 5 years, why now? Why like this? But the desperate hope, the years of guilt and grief, drowned out the warning bells per meta. I don't know. As I pushed through the last line of branches, I entered a small, unnatural clearing. The air was frigid, my breath pluming in front of me, despite the mild autumn evening. In the center of the clearing stood a single, towering dead pine, its bark stripped away, the wood bleached a bone white. And there, at its base, was a shape. It was huddled and dark, and for a heart-stopping moment, I thought it was my brother. "Liam," I whispered, taking a hesitant step forward. The shape stirred. "Alex," it rasped, and the voice was closer, clearer now, and it was definitely Liam's voice. I fell. "My leg is broken. I've been here so long." I started running, relief and terror warring within me. "I'm coming, Liam. I'm here." I was maybe 20 feet away when the figure slowly began to stand up, and it just kept standing. It unfolded itself, limbs elongating with a series of soft, wet pops and cracks. It was too tall, far too tall to be human. Its arms were long and spindly, ending in dirty, claw-like fingers that scraped against the dead leaves on the ground. The shape was skeletal, wrapped in tight, graying skin that looked like old parchment. A pair of antlers, yellowed and gnarled like dead branches, sprouted from its matted hair. I stopped dead in my tracks, my run turning into a stumbling halt. My blood ran cold. This wasn't Liam. This was the thing from Grandpa's stories, the creature that walks on the wind, the spirit of the lonely places. The Wendigo. It turned its head slowly, and the face, God. The face was the worst part. It was a grotesque caricature of a human face, with sunken black pits, 4 eyes and a mouth stretched too wide, filled with jagged, yellow teeth. But it was the way it looked at me, not with anger, but with a cold, calculating intelligence, and a bottomless hunger. Then it spoke again, not in Liam's voice this time. Its real voice was a dry, rasping whisper, like stones grinding together. "So hungry," it hissed, taking a slow, deliberate step towards me. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, yet terrifyingly fast. It tilted its head, a gesture almost of curiosity. "You came," it whispered, and then it smiled, a horrifying split in its face. Just like he did. My mind finally broke free from the paralysis. I didn't scream. Primera, Cuda, and all the air had been vacuumed from my lungs. I just turned and ran. I ran faster than I've ever run in my life, branches whipping at my face, my feet catching on roots I couldn't see in the deepening gloom. Behind me, I heard it, the sound of its pursuit. It wasn't the sound of running. It was the sound of snapping trees and the sickening crunch of bone as it moved through the forest with impossible speed. And it was talking. It was using Liam's voice again, but now it was a mocking, twisted version. "Don't leave me, Alex. You promised you'd always find me. Why are you running from your brother?" Then it would switch to my mother's voice, pleading, "Alex, honey, come back. It's dangerous out here alone." Then my father's, booming and angry, "Get back here right now, you coward. Ithken you timid." Knew their voices. It had been listening. For how long? I burst back onto the main trail, not daring to look back. I could feel its presence behind me, a cold weight on the air. I sprinted toward the parking lot, my lungs on fire, tears streaming down my face. I didn't stop until I slammed my car door shut, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so violently I could barely get it into the ignition. As the engine roared to life and my headlights cut through the darkness, I glanced in my rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw it, standing at the edge of the woods, just beyond the reach of my headlights. A tall, gaunt silhouette against the black trees. It wasn't moving, it was just watching me, and as I sped away, leaving a cloud of gravel and dust, I could have sworn I heard one last whisper carried on the wind, a perfect imitation of my own voice, calling my own name into the dark. I never went back to those woods. I moved away from that town a week later, but I never forgot. Sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls outside my window, I hear it. A faint whisper. It calls my name. And sometimes it uses the voices of people I love now. My friends, my partner. It's letting me know it remembers me. It's letting me know it's still hungry. And it's letting me know that someday it will come to collect on the promise I made to my brother that I would always find him. Thanks for listening. If this story chilled you to the bone, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Stay safe out there. I've been guiding deer hunts in northern Minnesota's Boundary Waters region for 17 years, operating out of a family-owned outfitting service that runs 6 permanent camps along the Canadian border. In November 2021, I took a group of 4 hunters into Camp 7, a site we'd been using since 1987, located 8 miles off the Gunflint Trail on the edge of a roadless wilderness area. The week before opener, our camp manager mentioned that the trail cameras had been recording strange activity, deer passing through at full sprint in the middle of the night, and several frames showing what looked like a tall figure moving through the background, too distant to identify but walking upright in areas where no hiking trails exist. Probably just glitches, he said, but he pulled all 8 cameras anyway and told me to bring extra batteries for the radio. On November 6th, under a sky-threatening snow, we paddled north into country where the lakes have no names and the forest has been logged in over a century. Camp 7 sits on a granite shelf overlooking a beaver pond. 3 canvas wall tents arranged around a stone fire ring. We spent the first afternoon setting up camp and glassing the hardwood ridges, where the bucks come down to water at dusk. The hunters were easy clients, experienced, quiet, respectful. We ate venison chili over the fire that night while I went over the plan. The temperature was dropping fast, down to 12 degrees by 9 p.m. That's when one of the brothers, Tom, asked if I'd heard the whistling, but he made he said it had started around sunset, coming from the far side of the pond. 3 long notes, evenly spaced, repeated twice, then silence. Probably an owl, I said, but I didn't believe it. Owls don't whistle. We woke at 4:30 a.m. and headed out in the dark toward the ridge, stand a mile north. The snow had started, small, dry flakes that hissed through the pines. We were halfway there when I smelled it. Rot, thick and sweet, mixed with something acrid like burning hair. 50 feet to our left was a deer carcass, a big doe, gutted and quartered with surgical precision. No blood, no drag marks, and the meat was gone, not eaten, removed. The bones were clean, stacked in a pile beside the rib cage, arranged by size, like someone had been sorting them. We continued to the ridge, but the mood had shifted. Dawn came slow and gray, and we glassed the beaver pond below. For 30 minutes, nothing. Then Tom grabbed my arm and pointed. A buck was crossing the frozen pond at a full run, head low, ears pinned, sprinting like something was chasing it, but nothing was behind it. Seconds later, a doe followed, then another, then 2 yearlings, all running flat out. I glassed the tree line where they'd come from and saw movement. Something tall and pale slipping between the birches, moving with a gait that was wrong, limbs too long. Tom looked through the binoculars, lowered them slowly, and said, "We need to leave." We made it back to camp by 10 a.m. The hunters wanted to leave. I wanted to understand what we were dealing with. Then the whistling started again. Closer this time, coming from the cedar swamp, east of camp. 3 notes. Pause. 3 notes. Then a 4th sound. Lower, guttural, like a voice trying to form words. One of the hunters, Mark, stood up and yelled into the trees. "Who's out there?" The whistling stopped. Then, from the same spot, Mark's voice answered. "Who's out there?" Perfect replication. Same tone, same inflection. Mark went white. I grabbed the radio, but got only static. That's when we heard the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, circling the camp just beyond the firelight. The stride was at least 6 feet. Whatever was out there was big, bipedal, and learning our voices. We fortified the cook tent and kept the fire roaring. No one slept. Around 3 a.m., it stepped into the firelight. Just for a moment. 8 feet tall, skeletal, covered in patches of matted fur and exposed skin that looked like old leather. The head was elongated with malformed antlers jutting at wrong angles. Its eyes glowed faintly yellow, and its mouth hung open, lined with teeth that looked human but filed 2 points. It stared at Wessa, swaying slightly, then spoke in my voice, "We need to leave." Then it stepped back into the dark. Tom fired twice into the trees. We heard it laugh. A wet, rattling sound that didn't come from lungs. At first light, we abandoned everything except our rifles and paddled out in near silence. When we reached the Gunflint Trail 6 hours later, the outfitter was waiting. He took one look at us and didn't ask questions. I filed a report with the DNR, but they never followed up. Camp 7 was closed for the season and hasn't been reopened since. Tom sent me a message 3 months later. He'd started hearing the whistling again, outside his house in Wisconsin. Always at night, always 3 notes. Then his dog disappeared. Last I heard, he'd moved to Arizona. I don't guide anymore, but sometimes, late at night, I hear my own voice calling to me from the woods behind my apartment, and I know better than to answer. Every park ranger has that one story they never tell. The one that's locked away, buried under layers of routine patrols and mundane paperwork. For Old Man Hemlock, who'd been with the National Park Service since before I was born. That story was Section 7. Ask him about a bear encounter, a lost hiker, a forest fire. And he'd talk your ear off, but bring up Section 7, and his face would turn to stone. The cheerful glint in his eyes would vanish, replaced by a deep, haunted shadow. "Some places are best left alone," Katie grumbled, and that was the end of it. Of course, that just made me more curious. I was young, arrogant, fresh out of training. I saw the wild as something to be managed, understood, conquered. I didn't believe in ghosts or monsters, so when a call came in about a missing hunter, last seen heading toward the unmarked trails near Section 7, I volunteered. Hemlock tried to stop me. He grabbed my arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a man his age. His voice was low, urgent. "Don't go there, son. Not alone. That place, it holds a hunger." I just laughed it off. Told him I'd be back before sundown with the lost hunter, and maybe a good story to finally shut him up. Primera dos halua. Ese a full. The air changes as you approach Section 7. It's a physical thing. The temperature drops a few degrees. The cheerful birdsong dies out, and the forest falls into an unnerving silence. Even the wind seems to hold its breath. The trail was easy to follow at first. The missing hunter, a man named Marcus Thorne, had left a clear path. But then, the signs started getting weird. I found his high-powered rifle, leaning against a tree as if he'd just set it down for a moment. A little further, his pack, contents spilled on the ground. His GPS was smashed. It looked like he'd done it himself. Panic is a cold, slow-moving thing in the wilderness. It starts in your gut and creeps up your spine. Why would an experienced hunter abandon his gear? I called out his name. Marcus. It's the Park Service. Only the suffocating silence answered. I pushed on, my hand now resting on the grip of my own sidearm. The sun began to dip below the jagged peaks, painting the sky in shades of orange and blood red. That's when I found the first set of tracks. They were human-like, but not quite. Too long, too thin, with toes that seemed to dig into the hard earth like claws. And they were running alongside Marcus' Esse boot prints. He wasn't wandering lost. He was being chased. Night fell fast in that part of the woods. The canopy of ancient pines was so thick it blotted out the stars. I switched on my headlamp, its beam cutting a lonely cone of light through the oppressive darkness. And then I heard it. A voice carried on the wind. It sounded like a woman, crying softly. It was a classic trick, one they warned us about in training. People in distress can sound strange in the woods. But this felt different. It was alluring. My training screamed at me to ignore it, to stick to the search grid. But the sound was so full of sorrow, of pain. Against my better judgment, I moved toward it. The crying led me to a small clearing. In the center was a single, gnarled oak tree, its branches like skeletal arms reaching for the sky. And from one of those branches, something was hanging. It was Marcus's bright orange hunting jacket, torn to shreds. As my light panned down, I saw what was underneath. A pile of bones, picked clean, almost polished. They were arranged in a bizarre, almost ceremonial way. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a bear or a mountain lion. This was something else. Something intelligent. That's when the voice changed. The soft crying morphed into a dry, rasping whisper that seemed to come from all around me. It knew my name. Alex. So cold, so hungry. He spun around, my light darting through the trees. Nothing. Just endless, dark woods. But I could feel it. I could feel eyes on me, a predatory presence that made the hair on my arm stand up. I backed away from the tree, my heart hammering against my ribs. The whisper followed me, a constant, insidious murmur. Stay, we can share. The loneliness is the worst part. Isn't it, Alex? I started running. But I didn't care about the trail, about protocol, about anything but getting out of Section 7. Branches whipped at my face. Roots tried to trip me, but I didn't stop. The whispering turned into a high-pitched shriek, a sound of pure rage and insatiable hunger. I could hear it crashing through the undergrowth behind me, impossibly fast. It was tall and thin. I knew it without seeing it. A fleeting, skeletal shape at the edge of my vision. It moved like a spider, all wrong angles and jerky movements. I risked a glance over my shoulder. In the split second my headlamp illuminated it, I saw a face, gaunt, with hollow sockets, where eyes should have been, and a mouth stretched too wide, filled with needle-like teeth. Its skin was the color of ash, stretched tight over a skeletal frame that was horrifyingly human. The scream it let out then was not of this world. It was the sound of a blizzard, of cracking ice, of a soul being ripped apart. It was the sound of the Wendigo. I fell, tumbling down a short, steep embankment, and landing hard in a shallow creek. The icy water shocked me, but it might have saved my life. I scrambled under an overhang of rock, pressing myself into the freezing mud, and clicked off my headlamp. I held my breath, listening. Above me, I could hear it pacing back and forth, sniffing the air. The rasping whisper started again. Closer now. I can smell your fear, Ranger. It's delicious. So warm. I stayed there for what felt like an eternity, shivering, my mind replaying that horrifying image of its face over and over. Eventually, the sounds faded. I didn't move until the first hint of dawn broke through the trees. I was hypothermic, covered in cuts, but alive. I stumbled my way back toward the ranger station, never looking back. When I finally burst through the door, Hemlock was sitting there, a fresh pot of coffee brewing. He didn't look surprised. He just looked sad. He took one look at my face, my torn clothes, the terror in my eyes, and nodded slowly. He poured me a mug of coffee, his hand shaking slightly. "Now you know," he he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Now you know why we don't talk about Section 7. I never asked him about it again, and to this day, when the wind howls just right through the pines, I can still hear that whisper. And I know that somewhere in the deep, dark woods, the hunger is waiting." Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the frozen heart of winter, to a place where the wind howls like a hungry beast, and the snow buries everything in a blanket of white. This isn't just a ghost story, it's a tale of primal fear, of a hunger that never dies. Pull the blankets up tight, because we're heading out to Blizzard Line, mile 73. To talk about the Wendigo that tapped on the plow truck, our story comes from a guy named Frank, a seasoned snowplow operator who worked the treacherous mountain passes of northern Minnesota. For Frank, a blizzard wasn't a reason to stay home. It was a call to arms. His rig, a monstrous diesel-chugging beast he called the Grizzly, was his office, his sanctuary, and his shield against the fury of nature. He'd seen it all. Whiteouts so thick you couldn't see the hood of the truck, drifts taller than a house, and ice so slick it could send a semi-trailer spinning like a top. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the night of the White Death blizzard. It was late January, and the storm had been raging for 2 solid days. The state had shut down the highways, but Frank's job was to keep one critical artery, Route 73, open for emergency vehicles. This stretch of road was notorious. Locals called it the Blizzard Line. It snaked through miles of dense, old-growth forest, a place steeped in Ojibwe legend, a place, they whispered, that was best left alone when the winter moon was high and the pantry was empty. Frank was about 12 hours into his shift. The hypnotic rhythm of the engine, the scrape of the plow on asphalt, and the endless cascade of snow were his entire world. The temperature outside had plunged to 30 below, not counting the wind chill. Inside the heated cab, with a thermos of black coffee and a classic rock station crackling on the radio, he felt a sense of isolated calm. That is, until he reached the marker for mile 73. It happened in an instant. The radio cut out, replaced by a wall of static. Frank cursed, fiddling with the dial, but it was dead. Then, a flicker in his headlights. He squinted, trying to pierce the swirling vortex of snow. Up ahead, something was standing in the middle of the road. It was tall, impossibly so, and gaunt. Frank's first thought was a moose, or maybe a deer, trapped by the drifts. He slowed the Grizzly to a crawl, its powerful lights cutting a path through the storm. As he got closer, his blood ran cold. This was no animal he'd ever seen. It was skeletal, its limbs too long and thin, bent at angles that seemed unnatural. Its skin was the color of old bruises, stretched tight over a frame that looked like it hadn't known a meal in a century. Its head was crowned with a rack of what looked like jagged, broken deer antlers. And its face, Frank said, he will never forget the face. It was a sunken, hollow-cheeked nightmare, with eyes that glowed with a faint, predatory light, like embers in a dying fire. And it was just standing there, unmoving, as the blizzard raged around it. Frank slammed on the brakes, the Grizzly groaning as it came to a halt just 20 feet from the figure. Every instinct screamed at him to reverse, to turn and flee. But the road was too narrow, the snowbanks too high. He was trapped. The creature slowly turned its head, those burning eyes locking onto him. It didn't seem to feel the cold. It didn't seem to feel anything but a ravenous, ancient hunger. Then, it did something that defied all logic. It raised one of its long, stick-like arms and pointed a single, bony finger directly at Frank. And then, it started to walk towards the truck. It moved with a jerky, horrifying gait, like a marionette with its strings tangled, its joints cracking audibly, even over the howl of the wind. Panic seized Frank. He laid on the horn, a deafening blast that should have sent any living thing running for the hills. The creature didn't even flinch. It just kept coming, closer and closer, its emaciated form growing larger in his windshield. He could see its mouth now, a lipless slash filled with yellowed, pointed teeth. He threw the truck into reverse, the huge tires spinning for purchase on the ice. The Grizzly lurched backward a few feet, then slid, its rear end bumping hard against the snowbank. He was stuck, utterly, completely stuck. The thing was at the front of the truck now, its glowing eyes just inches from the massive plow blade. Frank watched in horror as it reached out a skeletal hand and patted the cold steel, as if greeting an old friend, and then came the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Rhythmic sound on the passenger side window. The creature had moved with impossible speed. It was right there, its grotesque face pressed against the glass, its breath fogging a small circle on the frozen pane. Its eyes, those terrible, burning eyes, stared into his, and in them, Frank saw an eternity of starvation. It was looking at him not as a person, but as a meal. Tap, tap, tap. Tapping grew more insistent. A long, dirty fingernail, more like a talon, was scraping against the glass. Frank screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of pure terror that was swallowed by the storm. He fumbled for the radio mic, shouting for help. For anyone, his voice cracking with fear, but only static answered. The creature tilted its head, a sickening grin spreading across its face. It opened its mouth, and a sound came out that wasn't human. It was a low, guttural rasp, a dry, whispering hiss that sounded like frozen leaves skittering across pavement. And in that sound, Frank could almost make out a word, repeated over and over. A word that echoed the gnawing emptiness in his own stomach, the hunger that had been growing since he'd passed mile 73. Hunger. 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 Frank felt a strange, terrifying shift inside himself. The thermos of coffee, the half-eaten sandwich on the seat beside Heimet, all seemed like a distant memory. A new, gnawing void was opening up in his belly. A cold, desperate craving he had never known. He had this wild urge to just open the door. He fought it, shaking his head, tears freezing on his cheeks. He cranked the engine, revving it until it roared, hoping the noise would scare the thing away. But the Wendigo just smiled, its awful, hungry smile, and tapped on the window again. Faster this time. Crack. A small fracture appeared in the corner of the heavy-duty glass. The creature's smile widened. It drew back its hand and slammed its bony fist against the window. The crack spiderwebbed across the pane. Frank knew he had seconds. In a last, desperate act, he remembered the flares in his emergency kit. With trembling hands, he ripped one out, popped the cap, and struck Italiano. A brilliant, hissing red light flooded the cab, painting the monster's face in a demonic glow. For the first time, the creature recoiled, shielding its eyes. It let out a shriek of rage and pain, a sound so high and thin it made Frank's teeth ache. It wasn't much, but it was an opening. With the creature momentarily blinded, Frank slammed the truck into drive, flooring the accelerator. The tires screamed, they smoked, they bit, and with a tremendous lurch, the grizzly broke free from the snowbank. He didn't steer around the creature. He aimed directly for it. The truck hit the Wendigo with the force of a freight train. There was a sickening crunch of bone and a flash of its skeletal form flying into the darkness. Frank didn't slow down. He didn't look back. He kept his foot pinned to the floor, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, the red flare still burning on the seat beside him. He drove for what felt like an eternity, the static on the radio finally giving way to the faint sound of music. As he crossed the county line, he pulled over, his body shaking uncontrollably. The driver's side of the plow was dented, and there was a long, dark scratch along the passenger door. But of the creature, there was no sign. Frank finished his shift, drove back to the depot, and quit on the spot. He never drove a snowplow again. He moved south, away from the big woods and the deep snows. But he says that sometimes, on the coldest winter nights, when the wind howls just right, he can still hear it. That tapping, and he can feel that cold, gnawing hunger in the pit of his stomach. A reminder of the thing that waits on the blizzard line. The Wendigo that is always, always hungry. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Remember to be careful on those lonely roads, because you never know what's waiting out there in the storm. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next descent into the dark. Stay safe out there,